Across the land of Bhārat, the tradition that later came to be described as Sanātana. It emerged gradually from a long continuum of observation, reflection, and articulation that unfolded across many centuries. Its earliest conceptual layers appear in the Vedic corpus, a body of knowledge composed and transmitted orally through disciplined recitation long before it was ever written down. These compositions were preserved through rigorous oral traditions that ensured remarkable continuity across generations. The expression Sanātana Dharma itself becomes more visible in later classical literature, yet the ideas it represents can be traced to much earlier foundations within the intellectual and spiritual culture of Bhārat. The word Sanātana signifies that which is eternal, perennial, and enduring beyond the cycles of historical time. Dharma derives from the Sanskrit root dhr, meaning to uphold, to sustain, or to support. In its earliest usage, Dharma did not refer to a sectarian religious identity. Rather, it referred to the sustaining principles that uphold order in the cosmos, stability in society, and responsibility in human conduct. In the Rig Veda, one of the oldest surviving textual traditions associated with the early Indo-Aryan culture of the Indian subcontinent, a foundational idea appears repeatedly: Rita. The concept of Rita referred to cosmic order, the underlying harmony governing the movements of the universe, the cycles of nature, and the moral structure of existence. The rising of the sun, the rhythm of seasons, the movement of celestial bodies, and the dependable patterns of rainfall were all understood as expressions of this universal order. Yet RTA was not limited to physical phenomena. It also carried ethical and metaphysical meaning. Human actions were believed to exist within this same structure of order. Truthfulness, responsibility, and right conduct were therefore seen as expressions of alignment with the deeper harmony of the universe. Over time, the idea of Rita gradually expanded into the broader notion of Dharma. While Rita described cosmic balance, Dharma extended that principle into the sphere of human life. Dharma came to represent the alignment between cosmic order and human responsibility, the understanding that individual actions should sustain harmony within oneself, within society, and within the wider fabric of existence. Unlike many religious traditions that later developed around a single founder or a single historical revelation, the early Vedic tradition did not originate from one defining moment or one authoritative figure. Instead, it developed through a cumulative body of insights associated with many seers known as rishis. These rishis were not regarded as authors in the conventional sense. They were understood as individuals who perceived or heard profound truths about the universe through deep contemplation and disciplined awareness. For this reason, the Vedic hymns are traditionally described as Shrutiyam, that which was heard or revealed, emphasizing the idea that knowledge was uncovered rather than invented. The rishis were therefore seen not as founders of a system, but as discoverers of truths that already existed within the structure of reality. The early Vedic worldview was deeply observational. The natural environment was not perceived as separate from sacred understanding. Fire, wind, dawn, rain, rivers, sky, and the sun appear frequently in Vedic hymns, not merely as physical phenomena, but as intelligible expressions of cosmic principles. These forces were invoked as deities, yet their significance was both symbolic and contemplative. Through poetic imagery, the Vedic seers articulated deeper metaphysical insights about the structure of existence. Fire, for instance, symbolized transformation and the connection between the human world and cosmic forces. Dawn represented renewal and awakening. Wind reflected movement and vitality. Through such symbolic language, the Vedas expressed philosophical ideas in forms that were both poetic and accessible. Knowledge within this tradition was preserved through the Guru Shishya Parampara, the lineage of teacher and disciple through which learning was transmitted across generations. This method of transmission ensured that philosophical inquiry, ritual practice, and contemplative discipline could continue, evolving while still maintaining continuity with earlier insights. As centuries passed, the ritual emphasis that characterized early Vedic life gradually began to coexist with deeper philosophical inquiry. This intellectual shift becomes especially visible in the literature known as the Upanishads, composed during the later Vedic period. In these texts, the focus moved increasingly toward inward reflection. Thinkers began asking questions not only about cosmic order, but also about the nature of consciousness and existence itself. What is the true nature of the self? What is the ultimate reality underlying the universe? What is the relationship between individual consciousness and universal existence? And is there a state beyond suffering and the cycle of birth and death? The Upanishadic thinkers introduced several concepts that would profoundly influence Indian philosophical traditions. They described Brahman as the ultimate, unchanging reality underlying all existence. They explored the idea of Atman, the inner self that reflects this universal reality within each individual. They also articulated the concept of moksha, liberation from the cycle of birth and death, and the realization of the deeper unity between self and reality. In this philosophical development, the emphasis gradually shifted from external ritual performance toward internal realization and knowledge. Yet this transition did not abolish earlier traditions. Instead, it reinterpreted them. Ritual practices continued to exist, but they were increasingly understood as symbolic pathways toward deeper insight. By this stage, the intellectual and spiritual landscape of Bhārat had already developed. Multiple interwoven layers, ritual practices, ethical teachings, metaphysical inquiry, contemplative disciplines, and philosophical debate all coexisted within the same evolving framework. These elements were not organized into rigid institutional structures. Rather, they interacted dynamically within the broader civilizational culture. Importantly, this tradition did not form around a single doctrinal boundary that determined who belonged and who did not. There was no centralized ecclesiastical authority defining orthodoxy. Instead, continuity was maintained through teacher-disciple lineages, philosophical debates, interpretive commentaries, and sustained reflection across generations. Philosophical disagreements were not erased. They were preserved in texts and discussions. Different interpretations of reality were explored openly. This intellectual culture allowed to coexist within the same civilizational tradition without necessarily canceling one another. From a modern perspective, the absence of a single founder, central authority, or fixed creed can sometimes appear confusing. Yet within the historical context of Bharat, this fluidity was not understood as fragmentation. Rather, it reflected a civilizational assumption that truth could be approached from multiple directions and that different individuals might perceive different aspects of a deeper reality. For this reason, the early formation of what later came to be described as Sanātana Dharma was not structured around conversion, dogmatic membership, or institutional enforcement. It functioned instead as an evolving framework through which people explored questions of reality, duty, society, and transcendence. These ideas developed within the geographical, cultural, and linguistic environment of Bharat. Rivers, forests, mountains, and settlements became the settings within which philosophical reflection, ritual practice, and contemplative life unfolded. Over time, additional developments would emerge from these early foundations. Philosophical schools would later systematize metaphysical inquiry. Devotional traditions would express spiritual experience through poetry, music, and temple culture. Diverse sampradayams would articulate different interpretations of the relationship between the individual, the cosmos, and the divine. Yet beneath these later developments, the earliest foundations remained visible. A concern with sustaining cosmic and moral order, a respect for inquiry and philosophical exploration, and a willingness to allow layered interpretations of truth to coexist within the same. Episode by episode, this series will examine how these early foundations gradually expanded into structured philosophical systems, diverse devotional traditions, and complex social institutions that continue to evolve across the long history of Bhārat. This is Saki Soul Stories.